This is Jetting Up with B-Reich and Bryan Foti. What's up, everybody, and a pleasant good day and good afternoon to you here, live from the Jetting Up studios. This is Bryan Foti alongside my co-host, Bryan Reichert. B-Reich, what's up, kid? How we doing today? We're talking some Jets.
We're doing pretty well, baby. First day of mandatory camp. We're excited.
Yeah, man, it's going to be good. Today's show, we're going to talk a lot about the offseason for the New York Jets. It's going to be focused on this year's offseason, and they've had one of the most active offseasons in the NFL thus far. We'll get right into it, jump right in with the new head coaching staff, Adam Gase taking over for Todd Bowles. We'll get into the GM searches. Obviously, you know, the Jets fired McCagnon last couple of weeks. But right now, I'm going to get your reaction. I heard it already in the tone of your voice, B. Not really a fan of Adam Gase, right?
Well, you know, I mean, the coaching search was a little thorough, and they were throwing out some names, but, you know, Adam Gase was not one that jumped off the page to me to start. You know, had some success. I see him more as an offensive coordinator. Him as a head coach in Miami, I didn't like it. You know, he's not a player's guy. He ruffles a lot of feathers. I wasn't in love with the hire. But, you know, if you got to keep McCagnon, I understand the hire, you know?
He wasn't my first choice.
No,
and
you're
certainly,
a McCarthy guy.
Yeah,
I was definitely.
Of course, I liked Mike McCarthy. He was the guy I wanted for the New York Jets as their head coach. But, you know, Adam Gase is a guy who comes from Miami. There 3 years, made the playoffs his first year, had a kind of a shaky quarterback situation. He didn't really develop Ryan Tannehill, but then again, Tannehill couldn't really stay healthy. He had Brock Osweiler. He had Matt Moore, cast of characters down there in Miami that were brutal.
Not a great group.
Yeah, not a great crew. But he comes here, and everybody calls him the quarterback whisperer. So now we're going to see if this guy can really be a leader, because the Jets have a young quarterback. I'm rocking the jersey today. Your guy, Sam Darnold, going into the second year. A big part of this maturation process for Darnold is going to be, you know, getting a hand of an offense, increasing and making his play better in year two. And Adam Gase is definitely going to be that type of guy that if the Jets want to be successful, this is the type of head coach they wanted to hire, somebody that had a pedigree with quarterbacks, a guy that can coach, handle. He's never had a young quarterback before. He's got a little bit of, I think, a personality issue as far as, you know, it's either my way or the highway with Adam Gase. But in New York, it's going to be different. You know, it's going to be a lot more media. It's going to be more of a media frenzy here. If things don't go the way things go properly, it's going to be tough. And, you know, for me right now, I didn't like the hire, but I'm not going to knock it 1,000% just yet, because I want to see how he does, you know, and he's got the offensive pedigree, and we're going to find out. And there was some stuff that he said a couple weeks ago. We'll get into the offseason with the Jets, with Le'Veon Bell and all that I didn't really like. But you know what? Right now, I'm going to say let's not kill it. I'm not 100% on board. I wanted a more experienced guy, but let's see how Darnold develops. That's going to be the key to the season this year. And the Jets, they didn't go defense. They've had a defensive head coaches a lot in the past. Rex Ryan, Herman Edwards, Todd Bowles. They had Bill Parcells with the defensive guy. So this is their first time they're going offensive in probably the last 30 years. So let's see what happens.
And you have to appreciate that. You know, you have to appreciate that they're trying to, you know, tie a guy to Darnold. You know, he brings in his quarterback coach from Miami, Loggins, who, you know, he's got some good rapport with. And, you know, it's funny how a call from Peyton Manning, a guy who is not a Jet guy, is the seal of approval.
Spurned the Jets in '98. He didn't want to play. But, yeah, that's the seal of approval. Peyton does that. And, you know, Coach Gase is the guy. And he's got full power, because I guess the next move we'll get right into is Mike McCagnon getting fired 2 weeks ago. You know,
it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
It was
Bryan.
the timing.
It's absolutely disgusting.
See,
I hate to cut you off. This type of move frustrates me so much as a fan of this organization. It is so bad of a standard to set as a New York fan. Passionate fan base with the biggest offseason of the year. We let this man draft. We let him pick every single free agent, move pieces all over the chessboard, and then we decide he is not fit to run this organization. I have no idea what to say. As much as I want to try and be on board with this Gase guy, I cannot understand this move at all.
And the timing of the hire was really threw me back. I heard the rumors. A couple guys from Pro Football Talk were reporting it. Mike Lombardi, I know, had this story first and was saying that there was a lot of tension when Maccagnan hired Adam Gase in the locker room, or not in the locker room, the front office and scouting meetings before the draft. And I don't know what happened because Gase was only there. They hired him in January. We're in June now. It's been 4 months. The draft, they fired him early May. 4 months that the guy was there. He hired him. It was supposed to be his pick. And if you're Christopher Johnson, the acting owner of the New York Jets, and you were having second thoughts, you should have fired this guy with Todd Bowles after the season. That's the whole problem that I have. And, Bryan, you touched on it. When you let this man in, like you said, the most important offseason in Jet history, and I honestly, I like what they did. We'll get touched on that in a little bit. But when you let him spend $120 million in cap space, you let him pick his draft his guys, and the head coach isn't on the same page, or it looks to me and looks through the media that they're not on the same page, that's not a sound football move. That's not from an organizational standpoint. That's just not being on top of things, and that's just not a smart way to do business if you're the Jets. So for me, this whole Maccagnan thing, granted, I like what he did in the offseason, but he's not here now. It makes the Jets not look like know what they're doing, which with their history, it kind of fits the boat. You know, you'll see us during this
right
whole
on
podcast.
course, right on course. For
we
the
are not
Jets.
the most positive of Jet fans, but I will say this: it doesn't look that appealing for the organization right now. But again, for me, the timing was the whole issue. And if you didn't like Maccagnan and you thought that after you hired Gase, fire him before free agency, or at least get rid of him at the end of the season and cut bait. Everybody says in the NFL, it's owner, GM, and head coach, then the quarterback.
Exactly.
The owner and the GM, not the owner, the GM and the head coach are a tandem. They're a tag team. They work together. Now, Gase is probably going to hire his guys, so this will be more like a tag team, but the way the Jets structure their organization, I hate. I hate that the GM and the head coach can both report to the owner and not have to go through one of each other. And you could see it because probably Adam Gase, as soon as he got there, he probably saw a weak guy in Mike Maccagnan who didn't really say much in the press, was a quiet, mild guy, didn't like what he was doing, and he's going right to the owner, right to, not through him, saying this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He distanced himself, so you could see in the draft when the Jets posted their draft videos, Adam Gase, nowhere to be seen in those videos. Totally washed his hands, it looked like, of the draft. You're hearing that, we'll get into the draft in a minute, but you're hearing that they didn't like, that he wasn't a huge fan of Quinn Williams going into it. There was a fan, like, was he going to pick the pass rush? Did he want other guys? Maybe the offensive line he wanted to touch more. So there was just a lot of discrepancy. It's just weird to me that if Maccagnan hired this guy, how they could be so, not on the same page going into it. And especially in a tough offseason, for me, it's just, for the Jets, it's an inexcusable, really, thing to fire him right now in May. You should have done this a while ago. Now, they said it right, and Gase and said it the other day in the press conference. If they win games in September, everyone's going to forget about it. But right now, flavor of the month, off season in full swing. It's coming up to the layover before training camp. We need something to talk about, and this is going to be dominating. Probably not so much with mini camp and all that stuff upcoming, but it dominated the past couple of weeks. And my opinion on it was just not a good time. The timing was totally off.
No, it definitely makes the organization look like they have no idea what they're doing, as they usually do. And a guy like Mikey Mack, had his ups and downs. Not a great drafter. I thought made some moves, got us the quarterback that we needed. That was his crown jewel of a move. But, the guy basically hired the guy who fired him. And the main reason...
He let the rooster into the hen house. Crazy.
Absolutely. And the guy just completely steamrolled him, and he knew exactly what to do. And it's just crazy to see a guy who does not have a pedigree of getting along with players, even really, I don't even know how much he knows as developing, scouting, looking at guys, as a GM guy. And, he's opposing these moves, and he's totally taking over. And this guy has no track record or success doing that whatsoever. And I completely agree with you with the way the organization is set up. It'll never work that way, having two guys go to the owner. There has to be a chain of command. Or let me bring up a scenario since we're about to get into the GM search. I heard someone talk about this, and I kind of thought about it, and the more I do think about it, I want to suggest it. What do you think about possibly letting Adam Gase be the GM for the rest of the year?
Well, I don't think he can handle it because there's only one guy, and that's Bill Belichick, that can handle that role.
Now, I agree with you, but I'm trying to stop this carousel of a new coach and then a new GM, and at least we know that Adam Gase will be running the show. He doesn't have to answer to anybody else. He can go straight to Chris Johnson. All the moves are him for the next 2 or 3 years. He's in charge, and if we don't like where the team is going, we cut bait and make a change.
Well, I think the guy they're going to hire, and they're interviewing Joe Douglas, Champ Kelly, and probably the two front runners. They're both supposedly Adam Gase guys, and I think they kind of know working with them. So I think Gase is, to be honest with you, it is really Gase's show. He's there. The new GM is really going to be more of a figurehead.
100%.
Gase has control of the roster right now. He's going to cut the roster in June, July, in training camp. It's his roster. The GM, Adam Gase was a part of these 4 interviews that they conducted over the weekend. So when he says that Christopher Johnson's going to have the final say, I don't find that. I can't have a...
You can't trust that.
Yeah, you can't trust it because he lied to us once. So, when he said in the media that he had no problems with McCagnon, but for me, he's the GM effectively. This guy's going to be more of a figurehead. It's his team. So they're both going to be tied at the hip. And if he gets fired, they'll probably fire this guy along with him at that time. Hopefully it's not for a long time down the road. But, you got to give this guy at least 3 years now. This GM will be here for 3 years, so they're coming in together. But effectively, I think it's going to be Gase's team. They're all going to be on board with the moves. He's bringing the guy in, so it's more like it is Adam Gase running the show, but he just doesn't have to do the day-to-day with the contracts and just really worry more about the talent and coaching the guys the way he wants to see it fit. So moving on, we're going on to the GM search right now. Like I mentioned before, Champ Kelly, Joe Douglas from the Eagles was with the Ravens. Those were the top 2 candidates that I've heard. They interviewed a couple of guys as well. One from the Seahawks, and I believe the other one was from the Saints, right, B?
Yes, and, these 4 guys they're taking a good look at, but I think it all comes down to Joe Douglas. I think if he wants a job, I think it's his. I think he's got a great rapport with Gase, a decent history. He's shown some ability to find some good guys in the draft, pick up guys late, which the Jets have not done probably in the history of, Jets. But it'd be nice to actually get a couple of those pieces later in the round. But I think Joe Douglas, is probably going to be the pick.
All right, yeah, I think so too. He's definitely the favorite right now going into it. That's everything that I've heard and seen. They said don't be shocked if Champ Kelly gets it. He's another Gase guy. But, from what I've been reading, I'm not in any NFL circles, but a lot of people have been saying Joe Douglas is a very good talent evaluator. He was behind Howie Roseman in Philadelphia, helped put together those Super Bowl teams with the Eagles. Obviously in Baltimore, Ozzie Newsome, even though I know you went to college down there in the Baltimore, I can't stand the Ravens, but you got to admit that guy assembled a pretty good group of players down there. So those are 2 winning organizations in the recent memory. So he's got good experience there, learning from those guys. And I think if he comes to the Jets, working with Gase, like I said, it's going to be Gase's show. But at least, as a fan going forward, I can't knock the hire. So I won't be – that's the guy I want too, Joe Douglas. I don't know much about Champ Kelly, the other 2 candidates, to be honest with you. But that's the guy I'm hoping for. And, they're probably going to get a decision here probably by the end of their OTAs next week, hopefully. If he wants the job, like you said, I think he's going to have it as well. And we'll see where they go. But, again, it's really Adam Gase's show. That was the whole flavor of the offseason with him coming in within 4 months, winning the power struggle with McCagnon. I don't care what the owner says. There was a power struggle. He won it. It's his job now. And,
And also, with the GM search right now, it's also a bit of a dead time. Training camp's getting up. OTAs are starting, As training camp approaches, kind of the only real time when, the Jets will need a GM or a figure, kind of those cuts. Those final cuts, see if they could add a couple guys to make the roster a little better, a couple little tweaks. But most of the GM stuff is pretty much done until, basically the season starts and they start, preparing for the draft.
Yeah. So, again, like we said, Gase is going to cut the roster. That's going to be his call. He'll work with the GM, but again, this new GM's coming in. A lot of the workouts are done. The draft's done, so he's not really going to have much of an evaluation on these guys to get it. He's going to really rely on Adam Gase and his coaching staff to really, dictate when those cuts come, to see who, like the third stringers, the guy who are going to make the 53. I think Gase is going to have a big impact on that and how he wants to shape and mold this team going forward. But speaking of cuts and 53s, the NFL draft, always your favorite time of the year. That's your baby.
Absolutely, Foti. The NFL draft is easily one of my favorite times of the year. Always a great opportunity to see those college guys make the jump and for your team to get better.
And let's go over the picks for the New York Jets. And we'll start with Quinn Williams, who I like coming out of Alabama. There was a lot of, we had this discussion. We both, I think, would have liked the New York Jets to take a pass rusher in that first round. Josh Allen, the pass rusher from Kentucky, the edge rusher, was on the board with the number 3 pick where the Jets selected. But Mike McCagnon, most likely what he did in his tenure as the GM, he went with the safe pick. And, a couple of years back, he took Jamal Adams. He had Leonard Williams fall to him. He took him when they had Muhammad Wilkerson and Sheldon Richards. They didn't really need another 3-4 DN. And same thing here. That tackle spot where Quinn Williams fits in, whether it's a 3, he's probably going to play more of a 3, or I don't know how Gase or new DC Greg Williams is going to fit him in, but not really a need. And there was a pass rusher on the board, but again, everyone you talk to in the scouting community says that this guy could be a stud, all-pro, Pro Bowler, could have been the best player in the draft. So I like the pick. He's limited right now in minicamp, so he got banged up, hurt his calf a little bit, but just kind of precautionary there now. So we haven't really seen him, and obviously we're not really going to have too much to judge until we get a couple of games in the preseason, really. But coming out of college, the kid showed the ability, started 1 year, but really took the SEC by storm this year, and, had a great year in college and ended up being the 3 pick. A lot of people love the pick. What are your thoughts on Quinn, kid?
Well, at Alabama, he's kind of, a name that people knew, and he was starting to flash a little bit over the summer. But, you hit it right, hit the nail on the head. He absolutely dominated the SEC from start to finish. Every game, the kid was flashing all over the field. I thought he's a terrific prospect, rated extremely high. But, the Jets have kind of been taking this thing, best player available, Personally, I absolutely disagree with best player available, especially when you're picking so high. You need to fill holes. You need to plug in guys who can come in right away, contribute, and not only contribute at a high level, especially this draft, full of defensive players. Now, I wanted the pass rusher. I really wanted Bosa or Allen. I thought 2 great picks. I thought they were both. One of them was going to fall to the Jets, and it was going to be a home run. Now they decided to go Q. Q's a very talented guy. I think he's going to be great in New York. A little banged up with the calf, like you said, a little bit of inexperience, but, the reports that I'm reading, I think, Greg is going to kind of move him to that nose spot. And I think he's going to be a guy, using his athleticism. He ran a 4.8 at the combine, tested off the charts in his pro day, very quick. Obviously they comp him to Aaron Donald, which is, a very tough player comparison. But
if he's Aaron Donald, man,
anything like that, we'll take it for sure. But, as a pick, I thought it was a safe pick, and I know that's what a lot of people were saying with McCagnon. I personally wanted Josh Allen. I think he's going to be a stud, or I wanted to trade back. But they took a quality player here, and you can't be mad at that.
Yeah, he's a quality player, and, we're going to find out what he's all about moving forward. The third round, now, this to me, I think, is going to be, now that McCagnon's gone, it's really not going to be much of a non-story, as they played it up the day of the draft. But when he picked Ja'Kai Polite in that third round out of Florida, guy was a first-round talent, had some problems at the combine, had a bad pro day, didn't really interview too well with some teams. And a lot of people said this would probably be the draft pick because he is an edge pass rusher, has first-round pass rushing ability that would either make or break McCagnon's job. But now that he's fired, I find it pretty ironic that it's going to be a non-story. But I still think this might be a key because if the Jets could get a pass rusher of a first-round type grade that's going to have sacks and put pressure on the quarterback and still keep Quinn Williams, this could be a home run of a pick or it could be a bust. What are your thoughts? You're a University of Florida fan when we watch college football, so you've probably seen this guy more than me. I know another SEC player What are your thoughts on Polite?
Well, first of all, I love the SEC connection. Anytime we take an SEC guy, I love that. Even though I will take the hit, our Darius Stewart from Bama was not a great pick.
Oh, 2 years ago, brutal.
I'll take the hit
out
on that
of the
one.
league. Well,
I will.
He also drafted Chad Hansen that draft too. He stinks too.
Another guy out of the league.
And Christian Hackenberg. So McCagnon, not that we wouldn't. I know we said that before. Just
You're
the
not
timing.
shocked he got fired. Just the timing.
No.
With you on that. But to get back to Ja'Kai Polite, I mean, waited his turn in Florida, was kind of just a rotational guy, didn't play much, and then his junior year really flashed. Had double-digit sacks in the SEC against multiple, guys who were drafted this year at tackle. Very productive. But, you're right. There were question marks. He started to slide as the mock started to come out a little closer. Had an absolute meltdown at the NFL Combine when he ran his 40 time. Once he ran the 40, basically every question was asked, why are you so slow? He tried to gain some weight to try and be a little bit bigger of a prospect, but that did not work out. But I think, like you said, McCagnon is gone, but this is going to be a quality pick, I think. A guy who's productive could come in, push one of those outside linebackers because we don't have much there.
Yeah, it's not much there. Besides the inside, I love the Mosley pickup. I like Avery Williamson. But as far as pass rushing goes, it's really Jordan Jenkins. And then they got the kid from the Ivy League kid, Copeland, that is probably going to start. They traded Darren Lee. So Ja'Kai Polite's going to come in. He's probably going to compete with Copeland, but I think he'll win that job out if he has a pretty good training camp. He's got more ability, I think, than him. And,
I do too, Foti. I think he wins that job.
And, if we're confident, if we're thinking we're going to win that job, that shows me, he's going to come into camp. He's going to have a chip. He's not going to be given anything, and he's going to have to earn his playing time. And I think he's going to figure it out. I hope the Jets, the last GM regime, saw enough in him to pick him. I don't think, his mishaps in the pre-draft process were more of, he tried to gain weight. He didn't like some of the questions that team asked him. That now in Florida they said he was a little late to meetings, but those are all things that I think are correctable as you get to the NFL level, because in college it's not really your job. Now this is your job, so he'll have to learn how to be a pro and show up for work on time, and I think the Jets will definitely put him in position where he'll learn how to do that. They've got a pretty good veteran crew on that defensive side of the ball. They've got a lot of young players. I like Mosley. I think he's a linebacker that he could lean on as far as, veteran leadership there. Williamson's another glue guy. You got McClendon on this. So there's enough pieces on that defense that I think will keep him in check and show him how to be a professional. And now it's really up to him to if he can live up to the ability.
Yeah, if anybody could get anything out of this kid, I mean, Greg Williams is perfect fit. This kid's a rusher. He's been in the corners. He's trying to get some hurries. He's exactly what this defense needs. And also at the end of that round, the Jets acquired the 3rd round pick for trading Teddy Bridgewater. Think they could have got a little more if they held out, but understand they wanted to get Sammy in, which you can't complain about. But I wanted to think, what do you think of the offensive tackle that they drafted out of USC, Chuma 20 years old.
Chuma Adoa out of USC, 92nd. Pick in the NFL draft. To be honest with you, Bryan, not really. I don't know too much about him. They project him to be Kelvin Beachum, which ironically is the Jets' left tackle right now. He's short, so he's 6'3". I'm not an offensive line guy. I know they like the kid from Penn State, Trace McSorley, who got picked, I think, a couple picks before to the Cowboys. Not Trace McSorley. That's the, what was his name?
Connor McGovern.
Connor McGovern, the Penn State kid. He was picked 2 picks, I think, before them. So they jumped up back up into the 3rd round to get this guy. He was another lineman that McCagnon liked. He's going to be a depth piece because Brandon Shell going into free agency next year. Beacham's got 1 year left on his contract. I think he's kind of going to learn a little bit this year. Hopefully he can flash some things. Maybe they can move him inside to guard if he really flashes well this year, because I think the left side, not the left side, the right side of the Jets line with right guard is a little weak. So maybe he could compete if he plays well. But I think really this pick is more about for next year, developing a tackle. If one of Shell or Beacham doesn't come back, or if they want to pick another tackle, and you'll have him locked up for another couple of years. And, we'll see, stash him away this year and really see how he develops over in training camp and how he looks in the preseason. And then we'll have more of a conversation about him in the coming years, I would think.
Definitely a guy who started to grow, come up draft boards a little bit. quality player in the Pac-12. Had some good tape against guys, that were drafted like we've been talking about, guys that are in the NFL. He had some good. He had definitely a good year. Like I said, started to grow, and I think he could potentially be that Jets kind of sixth lineman that comes in, maybe battles a guy and pushes him. But with this next Jet selection, I think a lot of people are high on this kid, Trevon Wesco, tight end, West Virginia. I mean, Brian Bolding is calling this kid Baby Gronk. I don't know how many West Virginia games you saw, but I watched a ton of them. All they do is throw the ball around the yard. They had an NFL quarterback, Will Grier, got drafted by Carolina, I think, to back up Cam, quality guy, former Florida guy. But, this guy didn't do much. He kind of was a blocker, big body, athletic kid, but really didn't do enough in the passing game for me to get excited about this pick at all.
I didn't like this pick either. This was actually probably out of all the NFL picks that they had this year, the 6 of them, this was my least favorite for me. A blocking tight end in the 4th round, you could pick him later, I think, have better value there. Now, a lot of people, like you said, Brian Balding called him Baby Gronk, which made me feel a little bit better because he's a smart guy, and watching him, if you ever watch his stuff on NFL Network and NFL.com or on Twitter, he does a good job at breaking down quarterbacks. So, I'll value his opinion on that. As far as Wesco goes, I don't, like you said, they have a spread offense. They throw the ball all around the field. They've got tons of skill guys. They didn't use this guy. So how can I judge him? He's a blocking tight end, 4th round pick, so they're going to expect him to play. Herndon's going to be out for 4 games. They signed a tight end in the offseason, but Tomlinson's gone now. So
yeah, they may have to lean on this guy early.
Yeah, so
Foti, for sure.
We're going to find out more in the preseason about this kid. But, coming in, I don't want to kill the kid yet because I don't know anything really too much about him. I heard he can catch the ball a little bit, and he's not just more of a blocking tight end. He's a little bit more. He could do a little bit more. But the Jets, when they said they picked him, they said they picked him to be kind of their wide tight end on the ball, their blocking guy. But, we'll find out and see what he can do in training camp and in preseason and how they look. But for me, really, I don't really know too much going about this kid. And same thing with the last 2 picks. You would probably know more than me about Blake Cashman and Blason Austin from Rutgers. But we'll start with Cashman first. What did you think about him in the 5th round out of Minnesota? They said he was a walk-on, I think, over there. Ended up getting a scholarship, led the team in tackles his senior year, and then ended up being a 5th rounder. And a lot of NFL people, like on draft grading sites, give the Jets good grades. I see B+, A- on a couple. So a lot of good reviews on this kid coming out.
Yeah, Cashman's a kid, quality player from the Big Ten. Did his thing in Minnesota, like you said, was a story, walked on, earned his way on, and then played really well, very productive. And the thing that makes him an NFL pro, in my eyes, is just his speed. The Jets are loaded at inside linebacker, so I think this kid will be a dynamo on special teams, a quality guy. Maybe they're using some sub packages. But, a little bit of an exciting prospect. I like the pick. And Blason Austin is another kid that people raved about, thought he should be drafted higher, but had a big injury, tore his ACL, and was very limited. But another guy who could be a good risk, good reward, kind of got him at a good value. And if you have to grade this draft, through all their picks, I thought they did a pretty good job. Little on the safer side, but some quality picks for sure.
All right, so there you have it. Those are the New York Jets draft pick. They added a couple guys in undrafted free agency that we'll talk more about in training camp. I know, Bryan, you like the kid, the receiver out of Wake Forest that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, well, there's a couple guys. I thought the Jets did a very good job, looking at the undrafted free agent market. And 3 guys that really jumped off the page to me. Number 1, Greg Dortch. I mean, if this guy can just stay healthy, he's going to pop. He's going to pop. He's going to jump off the page. He's a quick guy. He plays the slot. Caught a ton of passes in Wake Forest. Return kicks, return punts. Did everything. Did wildcat quarterback. Ran the ball on reverses. Just a guy who's a playmaker. Came out a little early. Tore his ACL. And, kind of faded a little bit. Kind of fell off everybody's board. But a kid who, if he would have stayed another year, maybe 2, definitely going in the first 2 days drafted. So I think the Jets got a steal here. I thought they also took 2 other guys who I liked. Jalen Moore, running back from App State, quality back, could be a decent backup behind McGuire, kind of push Cannon. Definitely a quality back, ton of touchdowns coming out of college. And another guy to keep an eye on is this kid Frazier coming out of Boise State. Little bit of an unknown. Thought he might have get drafted. Ended up didn't. Had a bunch of sacks in Boise. Didn't play against the best competition. But they sent a lot of guys to the pros and a lot of quality guys. So definitely some good pickups by the Jets.
You're right, B. A lot of good pickups for the Jets here in the draft, but the draft is now over. We don't got a lot of time left here on the show, so it is now time for the 2-minute drill. It is time for the 2-minute drill here on the Jetting Up podcast with B-Reich and Bryan Foti. What we do is we do a little rapid fire. We shoot off a couple questions. In the future, we're going to get your questions here, so follow us again on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and eventually you can get your question on the podcast. So here we go. The first question for Bryan I will pose to him. We're talking about the draft today. Which defensive rookie for the New York Jets will make the most impact?
I'm actually going to go a little off the beaten path here. I know probably 99% of Jet fans are going to pick Q and hope it's Q, but I'm going to go a little off the beaten path. I'm going to go Ja'Kai Polite, the edge rusher from Florida who we got in the 3rd round. I think he has a quality year. I think he puts together, a sack total between 6 and 9, and I think he has a big year for the Jets. Foti, do you think the Jets have a top 10 draft pick in next year's draft?
2020, I really like Sam Darnold here. He's a guy that's coming into his 2nd year. I think he's the reason that he keeps them out of the top 10 next year. I like his development. I like some of the pieces the Jets added in the offseason. I like this draft class, and I like the direction that the team's going in. I say they're out of the top 10 for next year's draft. Another question for you, kid. Last one. The new GM, what do you think his first order of business is when he comes in?
I think the first order of business, we kind of talked a little bit about the GM time frame of what's really coming up, and I really think the first move that the new Jets GM has to do is they really have to try and skim those rosters, see who's getting cut on the 53-man, and see if there's a couple pieces that we can add to upgrade this roster.
There you have it. That is the 2-minute drill. This is going to wrap up the first edition of the Jetting Up podcast. Be sure to join us next time as we go over free agency. And in the upcoming weeks, we'll discuss the rest of the Jets all season. For now, everybody have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.